After dying for the second time, Seo's vision, which had blurred just moments earlier, opened once more. He glanced around and realized he was in the same forest along the ascension path. Looking down, he noticed his body pulsing with energy. Seeing that, he understood regression wasn't merely a one-time event. As he drifted deeper into thought, all of a sudden, Section Chief John charged at Seo in rage, yelling, "Deputy Manager Seo, you bastard!" But as John swung his arm to slap him, Seo quickly responded and avoided the blow. John kept trying to hit him, but Seo easily evaded every attempt. He didn't even seem concerned about John. He remained absorbed in thought, questioning, "Why was I brought back?" A new body full of energy and another chance seemed like a blessing. But what about the life he had spent 50 years building? Meanwhile, John grew more exhausted. Still lashing out, he screamed that Seo had nearly gotten them all killed, and now dared to dodge. Yet Seo said nothing. He kept asking himself, is this truly a blessing? Deep down, he knew it wasn't. This was a curse, a cruel fate that robbed his life of purpose. A few regressions might feel like luck, but if this cycle were eternal, he'd be trapped in the wheel of fate, doomed to suffer endlessly. And he'd never reunite with those from his past life. The people here were merely copies of the ones he had cherished. Director Kim, who once felt like an older brother, was no longer part of this reality. Seeing John stumbling and utterly worn out, Director Kim finally stepped forward, saying to Section Chief John, "That's enough." Seo then asked John to calm down, saying, "What good will anger do here?" Hearing that, John grew even more furious, calling Seo shameless. But before he could continue, Seo interrupted again. "To begin with, John, it was your turn to drive today. I warned you earlier, before you made me drive, that I hadn't slept last night due to the extra work you pushed onto me." Seo turned to walk away and asked John, "How could I have avoided an avalanche on such a narrow road?" He told John to stop blaming others and instead focus on what should be done next. John was left speechless. He was used to Seo always taking the blame and saying sorry. Seo then faced Director Kim and accidentally called him by name, as he had in his former life, but quickly corrected himself. He told Director Kim he'd search for shelter before sunset and asked the rest to look for the car or any possible route out of the forest. "When the sun sets, I'll light a fire, so come back to it." Seo was no longer trying to impress anyone. He wasn't interested in forming bonds because deep down, he understood what's the use of connecting with people who would vanish again. In the end, he'd remain alone. As dusk fell, Seo lit the fire. After the group searched for the car, they returned and spotted the fire. Seo seated quietly beside it, others fast asleep. But Seo stayed awake, his eyes filled with fear. He feared the endless cycle of regression, the infinite loop trapping him. He believed this ability needed to be erased and wondered if it would disappear if he ever reached Earth again. But since he always regressed to this very moment on the ascension path, he had no idea how to return. He recalled what the old cultivator had told him. When the ascension gate opens, nearby dimensions destabilize. Ordinary humans might get caught in those spatial storms. Understanding that the ascension gate truly existed, he felt it had to be tied to their fall into this world. And maybe, just maybe, it could be the key to returning home. He decided that first, he must grow stronger. As an ordinary mortal, he couldn't accomplish anything. He needed to become a cultivator like Director Kim and start cultivating. Once he gained a longer lifespan through cultivation, he would be able to research the ascension gate properly. Seo came out of the cave at night, and while looking at the sky, he decided that he would become a cultivator and go to the ascension gate. The next day, as the sun rose, Seo left the cave and ventured into the forest. He went to the same place where he had previously found those 1,000-year-old ginsengs. He dug out as many as he could and began eating them immediately without stopping. By eating them, Seo could feel strong quakes within his core. In his previous life, he hadn't known any heart methods, so eating these yellow bamboo roots would have done nothing. But using the dragon vein chi method that Director Kim had made for him, he could break through the blocked chi passageways. Seo's heart, which had been extremely polluted, slowly began to cleanse itself. It started beating like it had when he was born, Seo began sweating heavily as he cultivated, but he understood. It wasn't easy to heal a body soaked in preservatives, fast food, and stress. He didn't give up and continued. After eating those ginsengs, he went to train his body. He took a tree branch and, using rocks, carefully carved it into the shape of a sword. Looking at the somewhat sword-like stick, Seo thought that should do the work. He started swinging his sword. Remembering the training he had done in his previous life with Director Kim, he recalled his footwork and the way he used to swing his blade. In his past life, he had only been an average second-rate martial artist. And since he hadn't practiced near the end of his life, his skills had dulled. Of course, he wasn't completely helpless. He swung his wooden sword at a nearby tree using the severing mountain sword first form. With just a wooden sword, Seo cut into the tree and created a deep mark. He could do this because the martial arts from his previous life were still all in his head. So improving his skills was just a matter of time. But unknown to him, his sword practice had been seen by Director Kim, who had wandered into the forest. Director Kim was utterly shocked and called out from behind, asking, "What was that just now?" He ran up to Seo, asking, "How did you slash a tree with a wooden stick? Just what is that strength?" Seeing how excited Director Kim was, Seo smiled inside, thinking, "This is the man who will instruct me to become a cultivator." Seo turned to Director Kim and asked if he wanted to try learning this technique. Hearing that, Director Kim's face lit up with excitement. He asked Seo, "Can I really do it?" But before Seo could reply, something suddenly appeared and destroyed the tree where Seo had been practicing. It was none other than the nine-tailed fox. The nine-tailed fox glared at them angrily and shouted, "Filthy humans! How dare you play around in front of the master of this forest?" Seeing the nine-tailed fox, Director Kim was completely stunned. And not just him, even Seo grew very nervous. He had completely forgotten about the nine-tailed fox. In his second life, the nine-tailed fox had mercilessly bitten off Seo's arm. At that moment, he knew the only thing he could do now was endure. As the fox tore apart his arm, he slightly eased its pain by applying pressure to his own acupoint because he knew he was weak. In his first life and even in his second, he was weak. But now, in this third life, as the nine-tailed fox appeared before him, Seo took a deep breath and walked toward it. Scared, everyone called out to Seo from behind, telling him not to go there. But Seo didn't listen to them and continued toward the nine-tailed fox. Even now, in his third regression, he still didn't know how his second life had ended up that way. In his previous life, Seo had decided to become a cultivator after reaching the five-path core. But even after learning martial arts under the best master for over 100 years, he was barely considered a second-rank mastery warrior. Seo grabbed one arm with the other and used his strength to cut off his own arm, because he knew that compared to the people gathered here, his talent was trash. Seeing Seo cut off his own arm, everyone was shocked and terrified. Seo offered the severed arm to the nine-tailed fox to eat, because whether it took 1,000 years or 10,000, he was determined not to give up. Seeing him willingly offer his own arm, the nine-tailed fox laughed and said, "Human, you know your place. You know how to offer yourself as a sacrifice." The nine-tailed fox then decided to have a taste of Seo's arm. Hearing that, Seo silently resolved to offer his arm to the fox until the day he surpassed its strength. After the fox ate his arm, it allowed them to stay and then disappeared. Seo didn't care about the others. He simply went to a quiet place in the forest and kept swinging his sword. After a few days, the cultivators healed his arm and escorted his colleagues away. But Seo didn't eat, sleep, or rest. He kept swinging his sword. The only reason he stopped swinging on the fourth day was because the Sea Dragon King arrived. Seo greeted the Sea Dragon King with respect and said, "This lowly mortal dares to ask the Sea Dragon King a question." Seeing how respectful Seo was, the Sea Dragon King allowed him to speak. Seo asked, "It seems the Sea Dragon King wishes to take Miss O. But Miss O is just an ordinary person without spiritual roots, and ordinary humans cannot live longer than 100 years. What are your intentions toward her?" Hearing that, the Sea Dragon King laughed and said Seo was quite an observant mortal, someone who understood the state of cultivators well. But he told them not to worry, because once Miss O accepted his blood, she would awaken spiritual roots suitable for her. Seo was surprised to hear that and asked the Sea Dragon King if perhaps he could give them a chance as well, since Miss O was from the same hometown and maybe they too might possess some hidden ability. Hearing that, the Sea Dragon King smiled and told Seo to listen carefully. Just as he said that, Seo felt an overwhelming pressure on his chest and collapsed to the ground. The Sea Dragon King said, "I will say one thing out of concern. Do not carelessly express your opinions to a high-ranking cultivator like me. We have lived for hundreds or even thousands of years. We see what mortals cannot see. We know what mortals do not know." He looked at Seo with glowing green eyes and continued, "You have a good temperament, so I'll let it slide. But there are cruel ones who, just because your eyes met theirs, would tear you apart like insects and kill you." Saying that, the Sea Dragon King walked out of the cave with Miss O, then transformed into his dragon form and flew back into the sky. Seeing the Sea Dragon King's true form, Director Kim was completely shocked. The next day, as the weather cleared and everyone came out of the cave, they encountered the old cultivator riding the mechanical lion. As the old cultivator appeared, Seo stepped forward, greeted him and asked, "Our colleague, Miss Kim, is just an ordinary person without spiritual roots, so how could she possibly become your disciple?" Hearing that, the old cultivator laughed and took out an elixir, telling Seo that it was a very precious elixir capable of opening spiritual channels. If one took it, even an ordinary person might gain the chance to become immortal. Seo was shocked to hear that there was another way to become a cultivator. The old cultivator explained that it was possible for mortals to reach the realm of the five-path core by pushing their martial arts to the extreme. But that path took too long, and the results were unsatisfactory. So this method was the best. After telling them everything, the old cultivator opened a portal to the mortal world and sent them into it, saying both of them were useless to him now, so they should get lost. Both Seo and Director Kim fell into the teleportation portal, and Miss Kim could only watch them disappear, screaming. Seo lost consciousness there, and the next time he opened his eyes, he found himself hanging from a tree branch above the ground. He looked ahead and saw a vast forest with some buildings in the middle. Seeing that, Seo realized that this was the southwestern root army of the Yen Kingdom, his past life. Just like in the second regression, he had wandered all over the Yen Kingdom with Director Kim. Having traveled the Yen Kingdom for over 100 years, there were almost no places he didn't know now. Seo climbed down from the tree and woke up Director Kim. After waking him up, both of them headed toward a nearby castle. Seo explained the situation to Director Kim, who seemed flustered, but likely because so much had happened already, he accepted most of it. A few days later, they arrived at the nearest Tiger Wall Castle. There, they sold herbal medicine from the immortal ascending village and bought a house. Seo began teaching Director Kim how to write and speak the language, as well as how to use the Severing Mountain Blade, which Director Kim had originally created in his second regression. Seo then modified the Severing Mountain Sword to better suit the weapon Kim used. Seo felt a bit disappointed with himself as he watched Director Kim, because Director Kim had reached the Three Blossoms Crown Peak only 3 months after starting martial arts training, while someone like Seo had spent 2 entire lifetimes just training and had barely reached the first rate. After Director Kim reached peak level, he got excited and said, "If it's now, I think I could even beat you." Hearing that, Seo smiled, realizing that the man in front of him was not the same big brother he once served in a past life. This Director Kim was mentally much younger than Seo in terms of how long he had lived. He was now old enough to be Director Kim's grandfather. So, Seo decided that he shouldn't stay with him in this life. He gave Director Kim martial arts cultivation scrolls and the exhausting record of transcending, a book Kim had created in his previous life. He told Director Kim that from today onwards, he would be going his own way. Hearing that, Director Kim was shocked and asked, "What do you mean by that? Did I make a mistake? Is that why you're leaving? What's the reason?" When Director Kim asked about the reason, Seo remembered what had happened in his first regression. Director Kim had become the Martial Alliance leader, but fell into despair after losing to the cultivators. The second regression wasn't all that different. Director Kim developed the record of transcending cultivation and exhausting martial arts, and later created the record of martial arts surpassing through cultivation. He battled against the cultivators, but eventually, a more powerful one overwhelmed him, and he collapsed. After that defeat, Director Kim vanished, saying he would pursue the path of cultivation, leaving martial arts behind. And Seo thought perhaps this life would follow the same ending. But this time, he didn't want to witness his brother Kim falling into that same hopelessness again. So Seo gave an excuse, telling Director Kim that he wished to travel alone and hone his abilities. Hearing that, Director Kim asked if Seo couldn't train alongside him, questioning how he was supposed to go on without him. Seo told Director Kim that with his current martial arts prowess, he should be able to live just fine. Seo reminded him that he'd already taught him how to read, write, and even fight. Now that Kim had become a top-level master, there was no reason to worry. Still, Director Kim wasn't fully convinced. He asked Seo if he really had to leave his childhood companions behind once again. Seo was caught off guard by that. So he proposed that, starting today, they meet at this house once every 2 years. Director Kim, hearing that, finally agreed. After comforting the lonely Director Kim, Seo left the house and went on his way. Not long after, a disciple from the 8th Stronghold Pavilion appeared and asked, "What's going on in front of the 8th Stronghold Pavilion?" The man he questioned was Seo. Seo greeted him and told the disciple that he had come to formally request a duel at the 8th Stronghold Pavilion. Hearing this, the disciple laughed and said, "This isn't a place where random strangers can just show up." But before the disciple could finish speaking, Seo drew his sword and slashed, destroying the disciple's blade in one swift motion, stunning everyone nearby. After slicing the weapon, Seo asked him, "Do I still seem like a nobody to you?" Seo had made up his mind. He was fully determined that this time he would become truly powerful. What happens next? Stay tuned, the next part is coming soon. Don't miss it, and make sure to watch the next episode.